Hi, welcome to Alex Mitchell, Director of Product at Kin Insurance and founder of the Modern Product Manager. Alex, welcome to our ProdMBA Product Leadership Series.
Great to be here, Henry. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
No worries. So I was doing a good bit of research on you, well, a fair amount of research before we spoke. And obviously you do quite a few things, which is, you've got your own business, sort of modern product manager. You are also Director of Product. One thing that really caught my eye, which I sort of laughed about, is it's a topic I get very frustrated about was in your book, Building Digital Products, you mentioned this sort of agile urban dictionary. What you mentioned, and also sort of lots of buzzwords surrounding product manager. Maybe just talk to me about that.
So that was actually one of the parts of the book I had most fun with. Just for kind of the people watching, Building Digital Products is a book I wrote a few years back, really for both product managers breaking into this career for the first time. And back then, at least when I wrote it, it wasn't as developed of a field. There were lots of questions. I know I had a lot of questions when I came into this field of how to be a good product manager. But it also serves people who have been doing this maybe for a couple of years, who are looking for advice on how they can kind of move to the next level. So specifically, the kind of agile urban dictionary is, you hear, as you said, a lot of these buzzwords. So, different agile terms like retrospective or sprint planning. And what I tried to do in kind of a fun way is talk like a little bit about the real side of those meetings. So, if you were talking with colleagues who had maybe been a product manager for a while, what they would really tell you, that meeting is for, or what you should hope to get from it. Not the textbook definition of here's the thing, here are the exact 3 bullet points that we do, or that this is, retrospective is defined, but really like as a product manager in the real world, what do you want to accomplish with a retro with your development team? It's a little bit in the way I think I describe it. There's a little bit of a catharsis. It's like a release of emotions sometimes for the team. Sometimes the product manager is sitting back and letting, kind of people voice their opinions and kind of get that release. And that's a healthy retrospective. So just trying to give a little bit more real world definitions to, things that sometimes are defined in very boring ways out there. If you bought like a agile dictionary or something like that online.
No, I loved it because it's something that's so close to home for me. Like, ProdMBA, we do really hands-on product management training. And the core thesis, core belief and positioning is product management is really about practical hands-on things, right? The reality versus theory, I think, is far more different than in most other industries. And, I find it very frustrating that there is there's a sort of narrative, I think, particularly for people starting out in product, that you go and do an agile certification, you get your CSPO or whatever, X, Y, Z, whatever the term is. And then like, that's it, right? You're sort of ready for product. And I find it misleading in some ways. I
definitely think so too. Yeah. As I've kind of thought about, as I produce a lot of content in this space, it's kind of, you're getting to there's nothing that can really replace starting to be a product manager. And so whether that's, going and building something on the side, completely on your own or with a small team, whether it's, you're not called a product manager, but you're kind of thinking through all of those things that go along with creating something new, or you're interning and getting that exposure to how product actually works. It's really hard to encapsulate that, in a course before someone gets into product at all. So a lot of the writing I do is like, what's the quickest path you can find to actually going and doing product, not just reading about product, to kind of put it that way.
Yeah, exactly. No, a similar path of me. I think there's a lot of people I speak to. I think that's the sort of, when it comes to imparting knowledge to other product people, that there's a theme there. Right, which is like, no, it's not just like, yes, theory helps, but it is really about getting repetitions with things. I mean, it's why with our product, it's very based around, ultimately you're sort of building a product from scratch, because like my background as an entrepreneur, like I just saw so much overlap with what I was doing as an entrepreneur and what I was doing with product. And that I thought that would be a good way to teach products, essentially.
Definitely.
Yeah, but anyway, it's not about me or our product today at all. I mean, similarly on that topic, we talked about this sort of like nuance and complexity and reality of product. I find that there is a similar how to describe it, misunderstanding maybe of what product leadership is about as well. You know, again, it's sort of like, yeah, people throw buzzwords around like strategy. Like, what does that actually mean, and how do you actually put it into practice?
Yep.
On that though, what do you see as maybe undervalued traits of effective product leadership?
Yeah, so I think I have a couple in mind. So kind of one of the first ones for product leadership that's maybe undervalued is kind of setting the right goals. So much starts with kind of setting the right goals for, you know, your product team, or more broadly, these goals probably roll pretty tightly up to your company's goals, because product is kind of at the center of so much when it comes to achieving company goals. So really it's spending enough time, and it sometimes feels like too much time, but spending enough time choosing those 2 to 4 goals. Like, it shouldn't be a laundry list of goals. It shouldn't probably just be one, but it's like somewhere in that 2 to 4 range that are both motivating and critical to the business. And I think that's a really important thing for it to kind of have both of those. If you have just, you know, really boring metrics that, okay, yeah, maybe they're, you know, kind of important to the business, but they're not inspiring, and they don't dictate, they don't help you dictate strategy, I think that's a miss. And likewise, if you have something that's really motivating from a strategic perspective, but if you achieve it, it doesn't actually help the business, that's a fail too. So, you know, one of the things, you know, I've done it a couple of jobs now, is this concept of BHAGs. So they're big, hairy, audacious goals, kind of a silly term, but it basically encompasses those two things. They're kind of, you know, they're KPIs, they're number based, they're trackable, but they also have this like strategic component. So they help you over, you know, a period of time that might be months to quarters, kind of track in the right way and motivate your development. So coming back to it, just, you know, product leadership needs to really define those goals well. And then I think the next thing that's kind of undervalued is pushing down the responsibility for achieving those goals and deciding what we do to achieve those goals as far as possible. So, you know, kind of breaking those goals down, you know, maybe even taking one at a time and breaking them down to figuring out which product teams are attacking which of those goals, or those BHAGs in my example too, and empowering those product managers, maybe junior product managers even, that are working along with them, to really own those goals and own the different projects that they choose to address those goals. They're going to know better than you as a product leader, most likely, you know, which of these projects in their domain are going to move that number. And when they feel that ownership, they're going to work harder, they're going to be more creative, they're going to figure things out that as a busy product leader, you're probably not going to be able to do. So I think those are pretty undervalued things in the goal setting space. And then just more from a product leadership perspective, one other thing that I think is pretty kind of undervalued or not talked about enough is product leadership's ability to adapt and learn new things. I've seen in my career, sometimes you get stuck with product leadership that I'll call it like pattern matching. They've maybe seen this problem, you know, 10 years ago, and they're like, oh, 10 years ago, this thing works. But like, you know what, technology changes so fast. Like you can't take that, like, you know, solution, you know, cut it out from 10 years ago and like plop it in this 100%. Different company, a different space. Like, that is highly unlikely to work. And so the best leaders I've seen are, you know, very quickly adapting, working to think differently. And this becomes harder as you get older, but they're able to like keep breaking their own processes and like learn and find new things. So yeah, those are a couple of the ones that stand out to me, Henry.
Awesome. No, there's some good things I'm going to dig into there, but I love that last point as well. I was thinking about this, I think it was today actually. You know, somebody posted on LinkedIn about Marty Kagan's new book, Empowerment, right? One of the topics you sort of mentioned there. And said, you know, I don't read books by people that aren't currently working on products. And I thought that was really interesting, because something I was thinking about in parallel with, you know, I think, for example, the MVP concept is outdated. And one of the reasons is it's a buzzword and it's misused, misunderstood. The second one is I feel that actually the context of, let's say, 2007-8 Lean Startup being published is very different, because now you can basically build a full functioning app, either with no code or just like, you know, hack it together with different tools that exist. But it's also that the environment's different. I think, you know, the landscape, because it's so easy to go to market now, it's so competitive.
Yeah.
That it's much more about like, where can I create unique value than the questions of feasibility, like, which are important, but no point even worrying about those until you're pretty sure you're going to have something that, really engages a specific audience, like, really resonates with them. So sorry, you
Definitely. I think
mentioned.
one of the big points you're kind of hitting on here, Henry, is like these one size fits all solutions or
Yeah.
definitions are never right. Like
Yeah, exactly.
they're never right. Like they're interesting, they're good for like, expanding your brain and thinking, and like, yeah, maybe at times, right? Yeah, the MVP definition is helpful. At other times, maybe you decide to go in a different direction because of
Yeah.
strategy and other things. But just, yeah, applying one of these one size fits all definitions is not, a success creator. Like, yeah, maybe sometimes you'll be successful, but like you can't just use the same playbook every single time. I think I've learned that through product management. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember worked in Germany. It's very delivery focused. I remember working with some founders who I won't name, but yeah, they'd sold their company for like tens of millions. So I came in being like, this is going to be good product role, and you could just see them trying to replicate the same thing that they did with an e-commerce company with a B2B digital tool, and it's just like, this just isn't working. I mean, on that actually, let's getting more actionable. How do you find, or do you do this subconsciously? How do you sort of step back, go to first principles at times in these situations? Because I find that difficult myself.
Yeah. I think one of the great things you can do, and I didn't touch on this as like a leadership principle, but just in general, is having a diversity on your team, right? Whether that's diversity of age, diversity of backgrounds, diversity of perspectives, personalities, you name it. Like having that diversity helps challenge you and helps you kind of keep going back to the reason why we're doing this, the things we're trying to impact. And I think even just asking those simple questions is helpful sometimes. You sometimes get so far in the weeds with an idea or with, a potential solution, you forget the problem you're solving and and what the customer experiences you're trying to create maybe. So just going back and asking why or what we're trying to impact sometimes can pull you out of that maybe hole you were in, or that, same path you kept going down. But those two things, I think, like asking the basic questions and surrounding yourself with, continually newer, more diverse groups of people that can really challenge your pre-existing ideas or the way you used to do things consistently.
Yeah, I mean, that touches upon also the other point you mentioned, which was really, I really like that phrasing, pushing down responsibility as far down as possible, to sort of empowerment of teams. And because I think it's not only about giving them autonomy, but obviously creating a sort of psychological safety so that people are, they aren't going, shit, Alex is my boss, I'm scared to speak up to him, but actually I know that Alex values my opinion and wants his views questioned. You mentioned something really, really interesting, which I haven't actually heard anyone mention before, but makes a lot of sense. That when talking about goals, so obviously they should be important to the business and strategic, but you mentioned also that they should be inspiring. Maybe just expand a bit on that. I thought that was absolutely spot on, but I never thought of it in a goal setting framework.
Yeah, and maybe another thing I could kind of connect this to in terms of inspiring is kind of the way, like as a product manager, when you're talking about, a product release, or you're talking about, maybe moving metrics in the right direction. One of the things I've found that's most helpful is telling a story, like telling a story about, some customer's life we impacted in a positive way. And so, going back in my career a couple steps, I was at a company called Vistaprint Digital, who helped small businesses build websites, through our technology, social media presences. And these are the world's smallest business owners, people who are doing this on the side, very small restaurants, those types of things. And we were able to tell really compelling stories about how new features not only improved our metrics, but also improved the outcomes for our customers, right? And that really stuck with people. That motivated the developers, that motivated people outside of the development team, marketing team, that motivated our executives, that motivated the business. And so like when I go back to goals, like a number goal, and especially if we're able to move it in the right way, is somewhat motivating. If you have a little bit of a story around it, which is kind of these BHAGs, you can kind of get that much more out of it, right? It's exciting. It gets people, energetic. It also leads to them sharing that goal with others. And it just leads to higher retention also in their brain of this goal. It's not we're changing, the retention rate from 70 to 80% by the end of the year. It's, a really compelling story around it. And so, like, for example, in, my current role, our goal, one of our big goals is around kind of expanding to, new states and new products. One of the ways we could frame that is like a certain number of new products or new states introduced in maybe the next 6 months or a year or whatever the time frame is. But instead of that simpler definition, we actually have focused on like how much bigger we can make, our market of people who can buy insurance from us, and how many more people we can sell insurance to. And you're talking about like millions more people that could potentially be kin customers. That's really exciking, right? Like that goes much beyond like we will be in
selling
2 new states and we will be in 5 new products, right? It's like like 2.7 million people more are going to be able to be our customer. Like, I'm just pulling these numbers out of thin air, but you get the point. It tells the story along with a metric. So I know that was a little bit long-winded way of saying, but it makes it more actionable. It makes it more exciting and motivates people more.
I think that it's spot on, because I mean that we're storytelling animals, and I feel like we went slightly too far with this, like, being data driven, right? It is important, but also to not be blinded by that, to forget that, people are motivated by numbers on a page. And also that qualitative feedback is really valuable, right? Having maybe it's a testimonial or a quote that sort of really just summarizes, hey team, like, this is where we add value to people. It's not just like a list of, here are 10 things that people like about us with percentages of importance. No, here's a really nice compact, like a vision statement, right? Or statement from a customer that people always have in mind, that then is going to be subconsciously guiding them as well. That, I mean, it also touches upon, I think, really interesting thing that around sort of product leadership that's been a theme from everybody I've spoken to, is it's just sort of like simplifying everything down, right? It's like you build up this massive knowledge and experience, and then you just like, communicate clearly, try and delegate responsibility so you're doing less, telling a story, that kind of thing, which is, counterintuitive in a way when you maybe aren't in product or sort of looking to level up.
Yeah, I think that's one of the counterintuitive things. As you move further up, you should not be making like many more decisions. You should, I think Jeff Bezos says this, like, he makes a few really important decisions every day. And I think that's like the role of leadership too, is like push down as much responsibility as possible, make those really important decisions, set the right goals and bring the right people on the team to solve them, right? Like, those are your most important things to do, not make 100 decisions a day on behalf of your teams, right?
No, it's really good advice. I mean, do you have any specific like tactics that you use to, so I mean, I imagine like, firstly, you're director of product and you're running your own business. How do you keep that, perspective, that sort of zooming out? Is it just experience? Do you have specific tactics you use for that?
Yeah, I think some of it is experience. I think some is great mentors too. So I think one of my other things to maybe take away from this is just the importance of mentorship in both directions. And you're never too junior or too senior to have a mentor and to have a mentee. So have a person who you go to and a person or people that you help out. I think having those people, and especially ones who are outside of your company, those people can just give you that perspective sometimes. And, in these interviews, sometimes it looks like someone like me has maybe all the answers, and I don't. I need to have these conversations with people, talk things out, get other perspectives. And then I realize, oh, I have gone way too deep in here. Let me zoom out. Let me kind of focus on these things. So I would say just kind of coming to mentorship in both directions, upward and downward, so important. Even if you are the most junior product person, you're still in product. There are people you can mentor who are trying behind you to get into product. Or if you're, the chief product officer, there are other chief product officers that you can talk to at other companies that can open your perspective and give you that diversity of opinion and thought that I talked about before. So yeah, mentorship in both directions is one of the ways I cultivate that. Yeah,
it's really good advice. I think also it's, as we're having today, when you sort of speaking your thoughts at times, I think can be very, Or for example, you use a buzzword, like what does that really mean? And like, how do you explain it in simple terms to different levels of people, I think is a really interesting topic.
Yeah, I agree. Saying things out loud helps. Yeah.
So I've got a load of other questions, but we've only got 20 minutes. And I think though that means there's a good place to, you know, maybe follow up with talking about, for example, your other book, Disrupting Yourself, maybe some advice around that as well, particularly coming into 2021. Sure. But maybe just as a final question, what advice would you give to existing product managers looking to take that step up? Because we've covered quite a few topics. What one thing do you think people could do?
Yeah, so definitely. So I think the biggest one is probably the one I just ended on there. I think find a mentor, ideally outside of your company. What's great is even in today's kind of COVID pandemic world, which hopefully we'll be out of soon, there are great new resources to find mentors out there. So there are sites like Growth Mentor and Mentor Cruise that can help you, you know, find a product mentor. Also just look at your network. Chances are someone can probably introduce you to an interesting product person, or maybe you have someone already. And it doesn't take a lot to find that mentor, to talk with that mentor. You know, it's just a regular check-in, maybe 30 minutes, once a month. Come prepared, bring a few, you know, challenges you're wrestling with. Don't put it on the mentor to kind of steer the conversation. You're the one who should bring, you know, those questions to them, and really make sure you're thankful of their time. And you know, if you can help them too, of course, do that in any way you can. But that would probably be the most actionable thing for someone who's in product, looking to level up, is really, you know, embrace and find a mentor, and then try and start teaching some other people. You can teach people on your team who are more junior, or you can do this same mentorship approach and, you know, try and mentor some people maybe trying to break into the career. Both of those will give you many of the benefits we talked about that product leaders have to have, from diversity of opinion to being able to talk these things out. I think those are probably the most actionable things, I would say, Henry, that people today can just start doing. Yeah.
Awesome. The final thing I would add to that is also just, because I know it's going to question that's going to come up, is just, you know, if you don't ask, you don't get, right? You have to reach out to people. Usually they're happy to have the conversation. They're happy to help. And I think it's too easy to just not do it. So I would say, yeah, put that on your list to do, maybe, you know, beginning of 2021, just reach out to 5 people. As you said, go to that with a clear ask, come with specific talking points for that. And yeah, I think that's a really, really good advice there. Alex, thanks so much for the time. This has been, as you probably found, I've been diving in with loads of questions. Really interested to hear your thoughts on these topics. Is there anywhere you want us to send people?
Yeah, I think you mentioned it at the beginning, but I have a brand called The Modern Product Manager. That's just at themodernproductmanager.com. We have a lot of great free resources, from YouTube videos to a newsletter to just free downloads of materials that are really great for anyone either interested in product and wanting to learn more, or a lot of the people, you know, we talked about today, trying to maybe level up to either a product leader in the organization or whatever next step there is in their career. So the modernproductmanager.com is kind of your go-to for all of those resources. So that's what I would recommend those people check out.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Alex. It's been a pleasure. Thank you much for joining the Product Leadership Series.